So, I was reading this really fascinating study recently, about how humans perceive reality.
Oh, right, the categorization one.
Yeah, exactly. And it all boiled down to this very strange experiment involving a bucket of sand and a pyre of pebbles.
Right, a classic cognitive test.
Yeah. And when researchers asked people to describe what they saw, the language they used unconsciously revealed this massive divide in human cognition.
It's wild how much our words give away.
It really is. I mean, they looked at the pebbles and saw a collection of individual, distinct objects, but then they looked at the sand and their brains just registered stuff, just a singular
Sub
mass.
versus objects, yeah.
Right. The researchers found that this fundamental cognitive divide between objects and stuff is essentially the blueprint for how we built language. It's basically how we organize the entire universe in our minds.
It is the ultimate categorization system.
Hmm.
And what's truly mind-bending is that we do this categorization instantly. You know,
Subconsciously, right?
yeah, subconsciously, thousands of times a day,
Yeah.
without ever realizing it. We're constantly drawing these invisible boundaries around the things we interact with, deciding if they are distinct entities or just, well, a part of a larger unquantifiable whole.
And that invisible architecture is exactly what we are dissecting today on this deep dive.
I'm very excited for this one.
Me too. We are pulling from a stack of highly comprehensive grammar guides. Manuals that usually just sit untouched on a dusty classroom shelf somewhere.
Oh, yeah, the ones nobody actually wants to read.
Exactly. But we are using them to decode the absolute bedrock of the English language. We are talking about nouns today.
Foundational building blocks.
Right. And I mean, the minute someone says the word grammar, the instinct is to just brace for a barrage of arbitrary rules and confusing exceptions that you just have to memorize through brute force.
Which is an incredibly common reaction, and honestly, it's completely understandable.
Because it feels like a chore.
It does. When you just look at the surface of English grammar, it does look like a chaotic mess of gatekeeping. But that's because we rarely teach the why.
We just hand people a list, right?
Yeah, we hand people a list of rules and tell them to memorize it. So our mission with these sources today is to strip away that confusion for you.
But we want to actually make sense of it.
Exactly. We are going to build a structured, logical summary of how nouns operate. We'll explore singulars, plurals, the notoriously tricky uncountable nouns, and those bizarre collective nouns that even native speakers constantly misuse.
Because honestly, blindly memorizing vocabulary lists is just a terrible way to learn a language. I want to know why a word behaves the way it does.
You want the mechanics.
Right, I want the mechanics behind it. So before we start categorizing these things or trying to multiply them or navigating the frequent errors that trip up beginners, I want to start with a fundamental problem.
Okay, lay it on me.
If I'm staring at a complex sentence, how do I even know what I'm looking at? I mean, the traditional definition we all learned in school feels completely inadequate when you actually try to use it in the wild.
You're referring to the classic incantation. A noun is a person, a place, a thing, or an idea.
Exactly that one. And sure, well, person is easy. A baker is a person.
Yep, very clear.
And a place is easy. Chicago is a place. Thing is pretty broad, but I can point to a table. But that last one, idea.
Ah, yes. The idea.
That is where the wheels completely fall off for me. Like, how is a beginner supposed to use that to identify a noun in a sentence? I have ideas all the time.
Right, you're thinking, is the word thoughtful an idea?
Exactly. Because thoughtful is an adjective, but it's an idea. So the traditional definition feels more like philosophy than a practical tool.
It is entirely philosophical.
Yeah.
And you've hit on exactly why linguists and modern grammar guides have essentially abandoned it for practical instruction.
Really. They just threw it out.
Pretty much. Because relying on semantic meaning, trying to figure out if a word represents a thing, it's a trap.
Why is it a trap?
Because language is fluid. Actions can be things. Descriptions can act as concepts. So instead of looking at what the word means, our sources advocate for a much more foolproof method.
Okay, I'm all ears.
You look at how the word behaves structurally.
Which brings us to a shortcut that I genuinely wish someone had taught me 20 years ago. The guides call it the noun test.
It is a brilliant little tool.
It really is, and it completely bypasses that whole is this a person, place, or thing philosophical debate.
Yeah, it relies entirely on syntax. It is basically a structural litmus test.
So let's walk through it for everyone listening. How exactly does this test work?
The premise is remarkably straightforward. You take the word you are trying to identify, and you try to put the definite article, the, the, directly in front of it.
Okay, just the word the.
Right. And if you can pair the cas with your target word, and the resulting phrase sounds like a complete self-contained unit, well, the word you were testing is almost certainly a noun.
I love this. I've been conceptualizing this word, the, as a bouncer standing outside an exclusive nightclub.
A bouncer. I like that.
Yeah, let's call it the noun club. And the bouncer's only job is to check structural IDs.
That's a great visual.
Right, so if the bouncer lets the word stand right next to it and they look natural together, forming this VIP unit, then congratulations, the word is a noun. It gets into the club.
That's a highly effective mental model, actually. Let's apply your bouncer to some of the examples from our grammar guides.
Let's do it.
Let's take a simple word like boy. We walk it up to the bouncer, apply the test, and we get the boy.
Immediate entry. The boy sounds completely natural. It's a clear, standalone structural unit, so boy is a noun.
Correct. Let's try city. We say the city.
Again, very natural.
Yeah, it forms a cohesive unit. City is a noun.
Mm-hmm.
But the real power of this test isn't with the easy words.
Right, it's the tricky ones.
Exactly. The real power is how it handles those abstract ideas you were so frustrated by earlier.
You're okay throwing at me.
Let's take the word happiness.
Okay, this is where I'm going to push back a little. If I just say the happiness out loud, out of context, it feels a little clunky. I wouldn't normally just walk up to someone and say the happiness.
Well, no, you wouldn't say it in isolation as a greeting. That would be weird.
Very weird.
But think about it within the architecture of a sentence. Can you say, the happiness I felt was overwhelming?
Ah. Yes, I can. The phrase, the happiness, locks together perfectly in that context.
Exactly. Even though happiness isn't a physical object you can hold, structurally, the allows it to function as a contained unit.
The bouncer lets it in?
The bouncer waves it right through. Therefore, happiness is a noun.
But I want to see this bouncer actually reject someone. What does a failed test sound like?
That's a good question.
Because if I'm a beginner learner listening to this, I might not have the intuition to know what sounds right yet.
Right. Well, a failed test creates a distinct feeling of structural suspension. Your brain physically waits for a resolution that never comes.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's take the word quickly. If we walk quickly up to the bouncer, we get the quickly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the quickly. You're right. That actually feels uncomfortable to say.
It leaves you hanging.
It feels like my sentence is hanging off a cliff. The quickly.
Obey?
Wow. It demands another word to resolve the tensions.
Precisely. It fails because quickly is an adverb. Its entire purpose is to attach to an action, a verb, not to stand alone with an article.
So the bouncer rejects it.
Instantly. Let's try the word beautiful.
The beautiful. Same problem. It feels completely unfinished. I mean, I am immediately waiting for you to say the beautiful car or the beautiful painting.
Right. Needs help.
Yeah, on its own, the beautiful is totally blocked at the door.
Because beautiful is an adjective. Its structural job is to modify a noun, not to be one.
Okay, what about a functional word?
Like because.
Let's try it.
The because. Absolutely not. That's an instant rejection. Right, because is a conjunction. It exists to glue clauses together. So this simple practical test, just adding the, is the foundational tool.
It's so useful.
It is,
Yeah.
because before you can worry about pluralizing a word or deciding if it's countable, you must first isolate it. You have to know what the gravitational center of your sentence is.
Okay, so the bouncer has let all the legitimate nouns into the club, but once they are inside, they don't all just mingle together.
Right.
The sources make it very clear that the club is divided into different VIP sections. And the first massive overarching division we have to talk about is the split between the physical world and the invisible world.
Yes. Linguistically, every noun you identify can be sorted into one of two supercategories. You have concrete nouns and you have abstract nouns.
Let's start with the physical realm, the concrete nouns. The guides define this based entirely on sensory perception.
Which is fascinating, isn't it?
It really is, because it ties grammar directly to human biology.
It does. The rule is strictly biological. If you can perceive the referent of the word with at least one of your 5 physical senses, sight, hearing, smell, taste, or touch.
Then it's concrete.
Exactly. It belongs in the concrete category.
The sources give us some incredibly clear examples to anchor this, like phone. I can hold a phone. I can see the screen. It is tethered to the physical world. Concrete.
Right. What about perfume?
Ooh, perfume.
Now, this one is interesting because you might not be able to hold the scent itself in your hand like a stone.
Right? You can't grab a smell.
But your olfactory receptors physically interact with the chemical compounds in the air. You can literally smell it. It is biologically perceived. So concrete.
That makes perfect sense. Music is another one. Again, I can't grab a melody out of the air.
But you can hear it.
Exactly. Sound waves physically vibrate my eardrum, so concrete. And ice cream, obviously.
Obviously.
I can see it, I can definitely touch it, and I can taste it. Concrete.
Exactly. If it interacts with your sensory organs in any capacity, it is a concrete noun.
Okay, so what's the other side?
The counter to this, the other side of the club, is the abstract noun. These are entities that exist entirely and exclusively within the human mind.
So no physical form at all.
None. They are qualities, states of being, concepts, or emotions. You absolutely cannot perceive them with your five senses.
Okay, but this is where I start getting a little philosophical with the guides. They list love as an abstract noun,
They do.
but if I see two people hugging, aren't I seeing love? If I feel my heart rate go up, aren't I physically feeling love? Why is that abstract?
That is a brilliant distinction, and honestly, it's exactly the kind of trap learners fall into.
I mean, it feels real.
It is real, but you are not seeing love. You are seeing the physical manifestations of it, or the effects of love.
Like the hug itself.
Yes, the physical hug, the physical smile. You are feeling the biological adrenaline. But the concept of love itself, the actual principle,
You can't touch that.
exactly. You cannot put that in a beaker and measure its weight.
Mhm.
You cannot take a photograph of the emotion itself.
Okay. The photograph analogy works really well for me. If I take a picture of a hug, the concrete nouns in the photo are arms, people, faces.
Yes, the things you can point to.
Right. And the abstract noun love is just the invisible story my brain assigns to those physical objects.
Perfectly stated. Let's look at another one from the text. Time.
Oh, time is a weird one.
We experience the passage of time, right? We build physical clocks, we watch the sun move. But time as an entity,
Totally invisible.
completely invisible and untouchable. It is a conceptual framework we use to organize our reality.
Other abstract examples from our stack of guides include words like honesty, democracy, and information.
Think about information. You can hold a book, you can touch a hard drive. Those are concrete.
Right, the physical storage.
But the information stored upon them is an abstract concept. It has zero physical mass.
So I actually developed a little diagnostic tool while I was reading through this section, and I want you to pressure test it for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
I call it the cardboard box test.
The cardboard box test, go on.
If I can theoretically put the item into a cardboard box, even if it's a tiny box for a grain of sand, or a massive stadium-sized box for a cloud.
Right, adjusting for scale.
Yeah, if it goes in a box, it is a concrete noun. If it is impossible to put it in a box under any physical circumstances, it must be abstract. Does that hold up?
It holds up remarkably well for physical objects, yeah.
Yeah.
The only place your cardboard box test might struggle slightly is with phenomena like music or light.
Oh,
You
right.
can't really put a song in a cardboard box, but as we established, music is concrete because you can hear it.
That's fair. I'd need a very specialized, soundproof, light-proof cardboard box.
Exactly.
But the distinction between concrete and abstract isn't just linguistic trivia, is it? I mean, we aren't just categorizing these for the fun of it.
No, not at all.
The sources heavily imply that knowing if a noun is abstract or concrete is actually a prerequisite for understanding the next, and arguably most difficult, set of rules in English grammar.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
The abstract and concrete divide is the gateway.
The gateway to what?
Because how the human brain categorizes a thing, whether it's a tangible object or an invisible concept, directly dictates how we count that thing.
Counting.
Yes, and counting nouns is where English grammar becomes incredibly rigid, highly specific, and to be honest, deeply frustrating for anyone learning the language.
So we are stepping into what I call the geometry of nouns, section 3 of our deep dive, countable versus uncountable nouns.
The big one.
And I want to spend a significant amount of time here for you listening because according to the guides, this is the #1 area where beginners make structural errors.
It is the foundation of sentence architecture. Whether a noun is countable or uncountable dictates which articles you can use, which adjectives are allowed to modify it, and whether the verb that follows it needs to be singular or plural.
It controls everything.
It really does. If you get this wrong, the entire sentence collapses.
But let's start with the familiar territory. Count nouns. These feel very intuitive to me.
They are intuitive because they align with our physical interaction with distinct objects. Count nouns represent things that possess clear, defined boundaries.
Like a cup.
Exactly. Because they have boundaries, they can be separated from one another.
Yeah.
And because they can be separated, you can count them individually. 1, 2, 3.
And mechanically, this means count nouns have two distinct forms. A singular form for when you are looking at one bounded object and a plural form for when you are looking at multiple.
Exactly. The grammatical rules for count nouns reflect this reality. You can place numbers directly in front of them. You can say 3 books,
Or 10 cars.
right? You can use the singular indefinite articles a or an. You could say a dog or an apple.
And when we need to ask about the quantity of a count noun, the specific phrase we use is how many.
Yes, somebody.
Like how many cars are outside. And we respond with quantifiers designed for distinct units. Words like many, a few, or several. I have a few friends. There are several ideas on the table.
Notice you use the word ideas there.
Oh,
It's important to note that abstract nouns can be countable if we conceptualize them as distinct, separate instances. You can have one idea and then have a second totally different idea. They have conceptual boundaries.
but then we cross the border into the territory of uncountable nouns, or, non-count nouns, and it seems like all those intuitive rules just completely evaporate.
Well, they don't evaporate. They shift to reflect a different kind of reality. Uncountable nouns refer to things that English speakers conceptualize, not as distinct items with boundaries, but as a mass, a continuous substance, or a broad, undifferentiated concept.
Like the sand in that experiment I mentioned earlier.
Exactly like the sand, because the mind perceives it as an unbroken mass without distinct boundaries. It is logically impossible to count it. You cannot isolate one of it.
And because you can't count them, the grammatical restrictions are incredibly strict.
Very strict.
Let me list the absolute unbreakable rules from the guides for you. Rule 1. Uncountable nouns do not have a plural form. You cannot add an S to them. Rule 2. They are always treated as singular for verb agreement. Rule 3. You absolutely cannot put the article a or n in front of them.
That's a big one.
And Rule 4. You cannot put a number directly in front of them.
Which means our entire vocabulary for discussing quantity has to change. You can no longer ask how many. You must ask how much.
How much water, right?
Right. You cannot use many or a few. You must use quantifiers designed for volume and mass. Words like much, a little, a lot of, or some.
The grammar guides provide a massive list of categories for these uncountable nouns. And honestly, looking at this list, if I were learning English from scratch, I would just memorize these categories as a survival mechanism.
It's the safest bet.
Let's break them down because some of them are deeply counterintuitive.
The most obvious category is substances. Things that flow, or bulk materials that are composed of particles too small to matter individually.
Like the sand again.
Right. Words like water, salt, sugar, air, gas, and oil. You do not say, I drank 3 waters.
The next category is abstract concepts. We touched on this. Words representing vast, boundless ideas like love, peace, knowledge, time, and information.
You cannot say, he has 2 knowledges. It is just an accumulated mass of knowledge.
Then we have a category that constantly tricks learners. Activities.
Oh, this one is tough.
Words like work, homework, travel, reading, and sleeping. In English, these are conceptualized as continuous masses of effort or time, not as distinct, countable events.
Food and drink is another massive category. Milk, bread, rice, cheese, meat, juice.
Natural elements behave the same way. Weather, rain, snow, sunlight.
You don't count the individual flakes of snow unless you specifically say snowflakes. The phenomenon itself is an uncountable mass of snow.
And finally, the ultimate trap, the category that I see trip up almost every non-native speaker I know, collective ideas.
Yes.
Words like furniture, luggage, equipment, and jewelry.
This category is treacherous because in many Romance languages and in many Germanic languages, these concepts are perfectly countable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But in English, furniture is an abstract, overarching mass category. It is an umbrella term. It is fundamentally uncountable.
Let's actually address you directly right now, the listener, because the guides feature a frequent error section that highlights exactly how these uncountable rules go wrong in daily conversation.
These are crucial to know.
If you are learning English, these are the traps you need to actively avoid to improve your grammar.
Trap number 1 involves the activity category, specifically the word homework. It is incredibly common to hear a learner say, I have a homework to do tonight.
But because homework is an uncountable mass of effort, you cannot use the article a. That is trying to put a boundary around something the language considers boundless.
Exactly. To fix this, you remove the a and use a mass quantifier. You say, I have some homework. Or, if it's a bad night, I have a lot of homework.
Trap number 2. My boss gave me an advice.
Again, advice is an abstract, uncountable concept in English. It has no edges. You cannot give an advice, and you certainly cannot give advice as plural.
So what's the fix?
The correct phrasing must be, my boss gave me some advice, or My boss gave me good advice.
Trap number 3, jumping back to that treacherous collective idea category. She bought many furnitures for her new apartment.
Multiple errors there. You cannot use many because that is a countable quantifier.
Right, we use many for bounded objects.
Exactly. And you absolutely cannot add an S to make it plural. Furniture is an immutable mass noun. The correct sentence is, she bought a lot of furniture.
Okay, but let's pause here and introduce some reality into this grammar lesson.
Okay.
I am sitting in a room right now with 2 chairs, a desk, and a bookshelf. People buy individual chairs and tables all the time. Native speakers talk about specific quantities of water and bread every single day.
They certainly do.
So if I am forbidden by the rules of English from saying 2 waters or 3 breads or 4 furnitures, how on earth am I supposed to talk about specific quantities of these things in the real world?
This is where English grammar actually provides a brilliant, highly logical workaround. It is a system of grammatical extraction.
Grammatical extraction?
Yes. To make an uncountable mass countable, native speakers use what linguists call partitive phrases. But for our purposes, we can just call them containers or units of measurement.
Containers, I like that.
You don't ever count the uncountable noun itself.
Yeah.
Instead, you count the container that is holding a portion of it.
I actually have a visual analogy for this that helped me immensely when I was studying languages.
Oh, let's hear it.
Imagine every uncountable noun is a giant, infinitely deep swimming pool.
Okay, a swimming pool.
Let's take the uncountable noun water. You have a massive pool of water. You cannot reach your bare hands into that pool and hand someone one water. Your hands would just be wet.
Right, the substance has no boundaries to grab onto.
Exactly. To hand someone a distinct, countable amount, you have to take a bucket, a physical container, and dip it into the pool. Once you lift the bucket out, you have created a boundary. Now you can hand them one bucket of water.
That is brilliant.
You are mathematically counting the buckets, not the water itself.
That is a perfect representation of the syntax. You are applying a countable boundary to an uncountable mass. Let's look at the real-life examples from our sources using this container method.
Let's do it.
We established that you cannot say an advice, but if you apply a conceptual container, you can say a piece of advice.
A piece.
Right. The word piece is entirely countable. You can give 2 pieces of advice.
We can't say a furniture, but we can reach into that abstract pool and extract a piece of furniture or an item of furniture. Now I can say, I bought 3 items of furniture.
The grammar holds up perfectly.
It totally works.
You don't ask the waiter for a bread. You ask for a slice of bread or a loaf of bread.
A bottle of water, a cup of coffee, a glass of juice, a grain of wheat. By adding that specific container phrase, you successfully navigate the rules.
It's that simple.
And honestly, mastering these container phrases is one of the fastest ways for a beginner to sound naturally fluent. It instantly removes the jarring structural errors that native speakers subconsciously flinch at.
It's a huge level up. But because this is English, and English rarely allows a rule to exist without a fascinating complication, our sources also detail a phenomenon known as context changers.
Oh no, context change.
These are nouns that act as chameleons. They can flip back and forth between being perfectly countable, and strictly uncountable, depending entirely on the speaker's perspective in that specific moment.
This sounds like a nightmare for a learner. Give me an example of a word that constantly changes its own rules.
A classic example is the word hair.
Okay, I have hair. Is it countable or not?
Well, it depends entirely on how you are perceiving it. If you are looking at a person's head, and you are referring to the entire collection of strands as a single collective feature, your brain processes it as a mass.
That's a giant pool of hair.
Basically, it becomes uncountable. You say, she has beautiful hair. You would never say, she has beautiful hair.
Well, what if I'm at a restaurant and I look down at my soup?
Exactly. If you find a single, isolated strand floating in your soup, the context has drastically changed. It has been extracted from the mass.
It has a boundary now.
Yes. It now has distinct boundaries. Suddenly, it is perfectly countable. You call the waiter over and say, "Excuse me, I found a hair in my soup." Or, "I found 2 hairs."
The grammar literally morphs to match my physical perception of the object.
Exactly.
The guide gives another great example with the word paper. If I am standing by the printer and I'm talking about the physical material itself, the substance made of wood pulp, I'm viewing it as a mass. It is uncountable. I need some paper to print this.
Right.
But if I'm a professor talking about the essays my students just handed in, the word paper now means a distinct, bounded document. It becomes countable. I have to grade 20 papers tonight.
The word chicken operates on the same logic.
Wait, chicken.
Yeah. When you are visiting a farm, looking at live birds walking around the yard, they are distinct individual animals. Countable. Look at those 3 chickens.
Okay, I track that.
But the moment that animal is processed and placed on your dinner plate,
Mm-hmm.
it conceptually transitions from an individual animal into a culinary substance.
Oh, I see.
It becomes an uncountable mass. I really enjoy eating chicken. You wouldn't say I'm eating a chicken unless you intend to consume the entire bird in one sitting.
That is deeply fascinating. It proves that grammar isn't just a list of arbitrary rules. It's a mirror reflecting human cognition. It's all about how we draw boundaries around the world.
It really is.
But let's say we are looking at something that definitely has boundaries. A standard, countable noun, a dog, a book, a car. If it's countable, it means we have the power to multiply it. We can turn one thing into many things.
The multiplication game.
Right, which brings us to the mechanics of multiplication. How exactly do we turn a singular noun into a plural noun?
This brings us to a highly systematic set of formulas. While English is famous for its bizarre exceptions, the truth is that the vast, overwhelming majority of nouns follow a very predictable set of regular plural rules.
Let's break down these formulas for the listener. The sources outline 4 primary rules. Rule number 1 is what I would consider the default setting.
The default setting is wonderfully efficient. For most nouns in the English language, to indicate plurality, you simply attach the letter S to the end of the word.
Apple becomes apples. Cat becomes cats. Book becomes books. Ring becomes rings. It's almost frictionless.
Very straightforward.
But rule number 2 is where things get interesting because the language actually has to respond to the physical limitations of the human mouth.
All about phonetics.
Rule 2 applies to words that end in what linguists call hissing sounds.
Yes, technically called sibilants. If a noun ends in the letters S, double S, esh, ch, x, or z, the default rule fails. You cannot just add an S. The rule states that you must add es.
And I want to dig into why this happens because it's not just some monk 1,000 years ago deciding to make spelling harder, right?
No, not at all.
There is a pure biological imperative for this rule. Let's take the word box. It ends in an X, which phonetically is a KS sound. It's a hiss.
Right.
Box X.
If we followed the default rule and just slapped an S on the end, it would be spelled B-O-X-X-S-S. Try to say that out loud. Box. You can't. It is physically impossible to articulate that added S without it blending entirely into the X. Boxes sounds absolutely identical to the singular box.
Exactly. Because your mouth is already making a hissing sound at the end of the word, you cannot stack another hiss on top of it and expect the listener to hear the difference. The listener wouldn't know if you meant 1 box or 20.
And language exists to communicate clearly. So human evolution and the articulatory mechanics of our vocal tract forced a compromise.
We had to invent a fix.
Yeah. To make the plural noticeable to the listener, we had to force an entirely new syllable into existence. By inserting the vowel E before the S, we create a phonetic bridge. Box becomes boxes. We create a second beat. Now the plurality is perfectly audible.
It's incredible. The biology of the mouth dictates the grammar on the page. Bus becomes buses, kiss becomes kisses, brush becomes brushes, match becomes matches, beach becomes beaches.
And the guides make a special note regarding the letter Z.
Oh, right, the double Z.
Yeah, if a word ends in Z, like the word quiz, you don't just add ES. You actually have to double the consonant first. Quiz becomes quizzes with a double Z.
Okay, moving to rule number 3. I'm going to call this the Y crossroads.
The Y crossroads.
Because if a noun ends in the letter Y, you have to pause and look backwards before you can move forward. What you do depends entirely on the single letter sitting immediately to the left of that Y.
The crossroads gives you 2 possible paths. Path A occurs if the noun ends in a consonant plus Y. If that is the case, you must drop the Y entirely, replace it with an I, and then add ES.
So, consonant plus Y, let's take the word baby, B-A-B-Y. We look at the letter before the Y, it's A-B, which is a consonant.
So we take path A.
Right, we execute the maneuver, we drop the Y, change it to an I, and add ES, babies. B-A-B-I-E-S. Same mechanism for city becoming cities, stories becoming stories, and party becoming parties.
But path B is much less demanding. If the noun ends in a vowel plus Y, meaning the letter immediately before the Y is an A, E, I, O, or U.
So the
Yes. You ignore all of that complex replacement surgery. You simply treat it like a default word and add S.
vowel plus Y. Let's look at the word boy. B-O-Y. The letter before the Y is an O, a vowel. So we just slap an S on the end. Boys, B-O-Y-S.
Very easy.
Day becomes days, monkey becomes monkeys, key becomes keys.
Which brings us to the final major regular pattern, rule number 4, the F flip.
This is the one that always feels the most dramatic to read. If a noun ends in the letter F, or the letters F-E, you frequently have to completely amputate the F, flip it into a V, and then add ES.
And once again, this isn't arbitrary. This is an echo of history.
Oh, really? More phonetics.
Yes. In Old English, there was a phonetic rule where the F sound, when it was sandwiched between two vowels, naturally softened and voiced into a V sound because the vocal cords were already vibrating for the vowels.
So it's another biological phonetic shortcut that eventually got codified into the spelling. Let's look at the examples from the text. Shelf. To make it plural, we flip the F to a V and add ES, shelves. You can literally hear the hard, breathy F soften into a vibrating V.
Knife becomes knives, wife becomes wives, life becomes lives, leaf becomes leaves.
But wait, earlier I said that English rarely lets a rule survive without an exception. I can think of a word that breaks this F rule immediately.
Oh, I bet I know which one.
What about the word roof? The thing on top of my house. I don't say look at all the roofs, I say roofs. Just an S. Why doesn't it flip?
Ah, that is the beauty of linguistic evolution. Roof is an exception because it didn't undergo the same historical phonetic shift. Or in some cases, words that enter the language much later simply defaulted to the standards rule rather than adopting ancient phonetic habits.
That makes a lot of sense.
So yes, roof becomes roofs and chief becomes chiefs. The F remains hard.
So those 4 rules, the default S, the hissing ES, the Y crossroads, and the F flip, those will successfully guide you through multiplying 95% of the nouns in the English language.
The vast majority.
They're systematic, they're largely predictable,
But we have to address the remaining 5%.
we have to address the rebels, the irregulars, the words that look at those 4 neat, logical formulas we just spent 20 minutes dissecting and absolutely refuse to participate.
The rule breakers.
Our sources dedicate an entire section to these rule breakers, and I think the best way to handle this is to build a mental reference table for you, the listener.
The primary challenge with irregular plurals is that you cannot intuitively guess them. There's no formula to apply. They demand memorization.
Which is painful.
It is. However, you can make that memorization significantly more efficient. Instead of trying to memorize a massive alphabetical list, you should categorize these rebels based on how they choose to break the rules. I can put them into distinct behavioral profiles.
Let's build those profiles. Category 1 of our mental reference table, the vowel mutations.
The mutations.
These are nouns that completely ignore the end of the word. They don't add an S or an ES. Instead, they undergo internal surgery. The vowels right in the middle of the word mutate.
This is a direct artifact of Proto-Germanic languages. It's a process linguists call immutation or laut.
Umlaut, like the dots.
Yeah, related to that. Thousands of years ago, a suffix on the plural form actually caused the speaker to physically shift the vowel sound in the root word forward in their mouth. The suffix eventually died off and disappeared, but the mutated vowel remained locked in the language forever.
That is incredible. The spelling we use today is the ghost of a sound that hasn't been spoken in centuries.
It's linguistic archaeology.
Let's look at the famous examples. The classic is man mutating to men. The A shifts to an E. Similarly, woman mutates into women.
And we have the profound double vowel shifts. The Dolovan mutating into a double E. 1 foot becomes 2 feet, 1 touche becomes a mouthful of teeth, 1 goose becomes a flock of geese.
And we have more complex, almost unrecognizable shifts. A single mouse mutates into multiple mice.
Category 2 of our irregulars is very small, but culturally significant. The N additions.
Right, the EN words.
These are essentially historical survivors. In Old English, there were many different ways to make a word plural, and adding N was a very common one. Almost all of those words eventually modernized and took an S, but a tiny handful stubbornly held on to their ancient endings.
And the most prominent one, the one every English speaker uses constantly, is the word child. You absolutely never say child. You take that ancient ending and it becomes children.
Another rare survivor in this category is ox, which becomes oxen.
Category 3 is what I call the total word swaps. This is where the plural form looks so wildly different from the singular form that they appear completely unrelated.
The paramount example here, the one that is crucial for daily communication, is person.
Yeah.
When you have one human being is a person, but when you gather multiple human beings together, the word totally swaps out. You don't say persons, you say people.
I do want to note, you will occasionally hear persons in highly formalized legal contexts, like an elevator sign that says maximum capacity, 10 persons.
True. in legal jargon.
But in 99% of conversational English, one person becomes two people. Using persons at a party will make you sound like a robot reading a legal brief.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the final, and arguably most confusing, category of irregulars. Category 4, the do-nothings.
These are words that achieve plurality by doing absolutely nothing at all. The singular form and the plural form are utterly, perfectly identical. They refuse to change a single letter.
Many of these words are historically tied to hunting, farming, or animal husbandry.
Let's go through the list. You can have one sheep in a field, or you can have a flock of 100 sheep. It is never, under any circumstances, sheep's.
One deer in the woods or 5 deer. One moose, 2 moose. You also see this with certain scientific or categorized terms. One species, 2 species. One series of television, 2 series.
And the most famous aquatic example, one fish, 2 fish. Now, the grammar guides do offer a highly advanced caveat here.
Well, the fishes rule.
Yeah. You can technically use the word fishes, but only if you are a marine biologist referring to multiple distinct scientific species of fish. But if you are a normal person standing in front of an aquarium looking at 50 identical goldfish, you just say, "Look at all those fish."
Exactly. So for the listener trying to conquer this chaotic system, the memory tip is this. Group the chaos. When you are studying, put foot, tooth, and goose in one mental bucket. Put sheep, deer, and fish in another.
It makes it so much easier.
Organizing the irregularities by their historical behavior makes them vastly easier to retrieve during a conversation.
Okay, so we have successfully navigated the multiplication game. We took singular objects and multiplied them into many objects, but I want to pivot to a concept that essentially forces those multiple objects back into a single box.
The hive mind.
Yes, we need to talk about words that describe a group of interacting individuals, but package them linguistically as one single entity. We are moving into the fascinating territory of collective nouns.
The collective noun is a specialized word that, even though it possesses no plural s at the end, inherently and fundamentally refers to a group of people, animals, or things functioning together.
The sources give us a very practical list to anchor this concept. Words like team, family, audience, band, choir, class, gang, group, government.
When you look at the word team, physically on the page, it looks like a singular word. But conceptually, in your mind, you know that a team cannot exist without multiple individual players comprising it. It has a dual nature.
And this dual nature, a singular spelling masking a plural reality, it creates what I consider to be one of the most fascinating grammatical phenomena in the English language.
The big split.
I call it the big split, because how you treat these words grammatically doesn't just depend on the context. It depends on what side of the Atlantic Ocean you are standing on.
This is one of the most stark, defining divergences between American English and British English. It comes down to a linguistic concept called notional agreement versus formal agreement.
Break that down for me. Let's start with American English.
In American English, formal agreement almost always wins. The standard practice is to view the collective noun strictly by its formal spelling. It is spelled without an S, therefore it is singular.
Just visual logic.
Yeah, the American mind visualizes the collective as one massive monolithic unit. The individuals within it essentially vanish into the whole. Therefore, the American speaker pairs the collective noun with a singular verb.
So an American standing in New York will say, "My family is very large. The entire family unit is considered one singular thing." They will say, "The team is ready for the game. The government has made a decision. It's cohesive, it's tight, it's definitively singular."
However, in British English, notional agreement frequently takes over.
Notional agreement.
Yes, the British speaker is much more likely to conceptually break open that monolithic unit and view it notionally, meaning they focus on the reality that the unit is actually a collection of interacting individuals.
So they see the pieces.
Right. Because their mental focus is on the multiple individuals comprising the group, they will frequently pair the singular-looking noun with a plural verb.
This sounds so jarring to American ears. Give me the British equivalence.
A British speaker in London might easily say, "My family are all doctors,"
Whoa.
because they're focusing on the individual family members who hold medical degrees. They might read a sports headline that says, "The team are arguing in the locker room."
That sounds so strange to me.
An American would find that bizarre, but logically, a singular monolithic unit cannot argue with itself. It requires individual players arguing with each other. Therefore, a plural verb makes perfect notional sense. Or they might say, the government are debating the new law.
I love this. I use a camera lens analogy to keep this straight.
Let's hear it.
American English has the camera zoomed all the way out. You're standing on a hill looking at the forest, and you just see one giant solid mass of green, singular unit. British English takes that same camera and zooms all the way in. You are suddenly looking at the individual trees swaying and interacting with the wind. Plural individuals.
That is an exceptionally accurate way to visualize notional agreement.
But of course, the guides immediately throw a wrench into this elegant transatlantic flexibility. They highlight a massive, non-negotiable exception that every English learner must memorize immediately.
You know what it is.
It doesn't matter if you are zoomed in or zoomed out, American or British, there is a word that breaks the mold.
The police exception.
Yes. While words like team or family or government can flex and bend depending on your geographical location or your perspective, the collective noun police is utterly rigid.
The word police, always, without exception, requires a plural verb.
You must say, the police are investigating the crime. You absolutely cannot say the police is investigating. It is a catastrophic structural error.
Furthermore, you can never use police as a singular count noun. You cannot point across the street and say, look, there is a police.
No, never.
It is grammatically impossible. If you need to refer to a single individual, you must extract them from the collective by adding a noun. You must say, there is a police officer, or there is a policeman.
Our sources also point out a couple of other collective nouns that share this always plural rigidity. The word cattle. You never say the cattle is. You must say, the cattle have broken through the fence.
Right. Cattle is always plural.
And the word people, which we discussed earlier as the irregular plural of person, also operates as an always plural collective. People are gathering in the square. Never people is.
So collective nouns essentially function as shapeshifters within the language. You must constantly evaluate whether the grammar requires you to treat them as a singular whole or plural parts.
And if collective nouns are shapeshifters, our final category today features the ultimate masters of disguise.
The final boss level.
We are moving into the final boss level of noun mastery. These are the nouns that actively try to trick your brain. They look plural but aren't, or they look singular but aren't. They completely defy visual logic.
These are the tricky exceptions that genuinely trip up native speakers on a daily basis, largely because they look so much like regular plurals. Let's start with the imposters.
The imposters.
Nouns that end in the letter S look exactly like they should be plural, but demand strictly singular verbs.
When I was looking through the source list, a very clear pattern emerged here. These S-ending imposters are overwhelmingly academic subjects or specific fields of study, words like physics, mathematics, gymnastics, and economics.
Because they possess that final S, the overwhelming cognitive instinct is to pair them with a plural verb. It looks like books or cars.
So you want to say are.
Right. But they are singular fields of study. You cannot say physics are a difficult subject. You must treat it as a singular, unified discipline. Physics is a difficult subject. Mathematics is complex.
The guides note that diseases frequently fall into this imposter trap as well. The classic example is measles. It ends in S. But you wouldn't say, the measles are spreading. You treat the disease as a singular mass affliction. Measles is highly contagious.
And perhaps the most common imposter of all, a word we interact with every single day, the word news.
Oh man, the news.
News is a fascinating word etymologically but functionally in modern English. It is an uncountable, strictly singular noun.
Wait, hold on. This is where I push back. The word is literally new with an S on it. It's plural for things that are new. Why isn't it plural?
It's a great question. Historically, it was adapted from the French word nouvelle, which is plural. And for a long time, people did use it as a plural in English.
Well, they did.
Yeah. But over centuries of usage, the English-speaking mind began to conceptualize the daily intake of information not as a pile of individual new things, but as a single, continuous stream of data.
Like the sand again?
Exactly like the sand. It became an uncountable mass, just like information. So today, it is universally singular.
That makes so much sense. So I can never say, the news are good today. I must always say, the news is good today.
Exactly. Now let's flip the disguise. We just looked at singular concepts hiding behind plural spellings. Now let's look at the inseparable pairs.
The pairs.
These are physical objects that look like a single contained item in the real world, but grammatically, the language insists they are permanently, universally plural.
Looking at the list, these are overwhelmingly items of clothing or hand tools that are inherently manufactured from two identical, symmetrical parts functioning together. Trousers, jeans, shorts, scissors, glasses, binoculars.
Because the English mind conceptually divides these objects into their bifurcated parts. Two legs for jeans, two blades for scissors. They are permanently locked into plural grammar.
They can't be separated.
Right. They always take a plural verb. My jeans are blue. The scissors are sharp.
And just like with the word police, you cannot isolate them. I cannot walk into a clothing store and tell the clerk, "Excuse me, I would like to buy a jeans." The clerk would look at me like I was malfunctioning.
So how do we solve this? How do we purchase a single item of bifurcated clothing? We have to bring back the exact same container strategy we used for uncountable nouns.
Oh, we deploy the phrase "a pair of." That becomes our singular countable boundary.
Exactly. You wrap the plural object in a singular container. You say, I need to buy a pair of jeans. Or, if you're looking at eyewear, this pair of glasses costs a lot of money.
And notice the verb there. This pair of glasses costs. The verb costs is singular. It takes an S because it is agreeing with the singular container word pair, not the plural word glasses trapped inside it. The pair is the structural core of the sentence.
It's a beautiful piece of grammatical engineering. Moving further through our masters of disguise, the sources detail a highly nuanced rule regarding the sudden disappearance of articles. There are specific scenarios where the words a, an, and the completely vanish from the sentence.
Yes, the zero article rule. The guides state that when you are talking about plural nouns or uncountable mass nouns in a broad, universal, generalized sense, you drop the article entirely.
This is a very subtle way English shifts the scope of a conversation. Let's use the example from the text. Frogs are amphibians.
No article there.
Notice that the sentence does not begin with the. We aren't talking about the frogs in the local pond. By dropping the article, we elevate the statement to a universal truth encompassing all frogs that have ever existed.
Same thing with mass nouns. I love music. No article. You mean the entire abstract concept of music in the universe. Children need to play. All children, everywhere.
But watch what happens when you bring it back.
Right. If you introduce the bouncer, if you bring the word "the" back into the sentence, the scope instantly shrinks. If I say, "The children need to play," I am no longer making a philosophical statement about youth. I am looking at my specific kids destroying the living room, and I'm saying they need to go outside. The article changes the scope from universal to hyper-specific.
And this vanishing act leads to one more unique scenario. Places functioning as activities.
This one blew my mind a little bit because I use it every day and never realized the grammar behind it.
We all do it instinctively.
When you are talking about specific institutional locations like school, home, work, bed, or church, you drop the article if your focus is on the activity associated with the place rather than the physical architecture of the building.
It's a brilliant conceptual shortcut. Let's look at the source example. I go to school by bus. You deliberately do not say I go to the school. Dropping the article signals to the listener that you are participating in the abstract activity of being a student, engaging in education.
Dad left for work. He is engaging in the activity of his profession. They are at church. They are participating in spiritual worship. But if a carpenter is hired to fix a leaky roof on that same building, he would say, I am driving to the church.
Exactly. The addition of the article that strips away the abstract activity and forces the noun back into being a purely concrete physical structure. It is a masterful, invisible toggle switch in the language.
It's so cool. To wrap up our masterclass today, the sources offer a brief, almost comforting note on gendered nouns. Anyone who has ever tried to learn a Romance language like Spanish or French or Germanic language like German knows the absolute terror of grammatical gender.
Oh, it's brutal for beginners.
You have to memorize whether a table is feminine or if the wind is masculine or if a toaster is neuter. It is an overwhelming cognitive load.
English speakers, thankfully, are spared this torment. Historically, Old English did have a complex gender system, just like modern German.
Wait, it did?
Well, yeah. But after centuries of invasions, specifically the interactions between the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings, the language underwent a massive simplification process. To communicate and trade effectively, they essentially stripped away the complex endings of words, and the grammatical gender system collapsed right along with it.
And thank goodness it did. Today, the vast, overwhelming majority of nouns in English are neuter. They carry zero grammatical gender. A table is just a table. A computer is a computer. A cloud is a cloud.
The only remaining fragments of gender in English nouns are tied strictly to biological sex or specific titles.
Right, so we have masculine and feminine pairs for professions and royalty, actor and actress, prince and princess, waiter and waitress, hero and heroine, and we retain gendered terms in animal husbandry, a bull versus a cow, a rooster versus a hen.
But outside of those specific logical, biological distinctions, you essentially get a free pass on noun gender. The true complexity of English, as we've spent the last hour dissecting, lies entirely in its counting systems, its boundaries, and its collective behaviors.
Let's take a deep breath and look at the engine we just dismantled. We didn't just read a list of rules today. We took the very concept of the English noun and exposed the architecture underneath it.
We truly did. We moved far beyond the surface level.
We started by hiring the bouncer, giving you a foolproof structural test to confidently identify nouns in the wild, bypassing the confusing philosophy of people, places, and things. We explored the cognitive divide between the concrete physical world and the invisible realm of the abstract.
He tackled the uncountable pool.
Yes. We dove deep into the treacherous waters of the uncountable pool, learning how to use containers and buckets to extract what we need without breaking the structural rules of the language.
We navigated the mechanics of the multiplication game, decoding not just the regular formulas, but exploring the ancient historical reasons why the rebellious irregulars mutate their vowels or refuse to change at all.
We crossed the Atlantic to explore the hive mind of collective nouns, learning the difference between American monolithic units and British notional individuals. And finally, we exposed the masters of disguise.
The imposters, the bifurcated pairs.
The invisible togbles of the zero article. If you, the listener, can internalize these concepts, you are no longer just blindly memorizing vocabulary. You are operating the machinery of the language. You are transforming English from a chaotic, intimidating mess into a highly predictable, logical, and historically fascinating system.
And as we close, I want to leave you with a final, slightly philosophical puzzle to mull over.
I love a good puzzle.
We've spent an hour categorizing how English speakers label the world. But think deeply about the theory of linguistic determinism.
What's that?
It's the idea that the language you speak actually shapes the reality you perceive. Why did the early architects of English decide that a chair is a distinct, countable entity with clear boundaries, but furniture is an uncountable, abstract, boundless mass?
Wow. It fundamentally changes how you view the room you are sitting in right now.
Exactly. As you walk around your house or your office today, I challenge you to look at the physical objects around you and ask yourself, is this a distinct, countable thing in my mind? Or is it an uncountable stuff? Why is a physical piece of paper uncountable, but the document printed on it is countable?
That is profound.
The answers to those questions aren't just grammar rules. They are the invisible blueprints of human psychology. Grammar is a map of how our ancestors learned to perceive the physical universe.
That is just incredible. Next time you look under the hood of a complex sentence, you won't just see a tangle of frustrating vocabulary words. You will literally see the cognitive psychology of the people who built the engine. Thank you for diving deep with us today. Keep questioning the rules, keep cracking the code, and keep learning.